Good evening, everyone. I see the time is 5:30. I'll call this meeting of the Harrison Hot Springs Village Council to order. It's Monday, August 10th. I'd like to begin by acknowledging that our meeting tonight takes place on the traditional territory of Stahelis. There's no public hearing tonight. Late items. Are there any late items to introduce this evening? I don't see any, so we'll move to item 5 on the agenda, which is approval of the agenda. Could I have a motion to that effect?
Second, Your Worship.
Moved by Councillor Jackson, seconded by Councillor Faccio. Discussion on the agenda. I see none. I'll call the vote. All in favor? And that carries. With our approved agenda, item 6 is, are there any declarations of conflict of interest this evening? I see none. We will move to item 7, which is adoption of council minutes. There's an A and a B. Could I get a motion to that effect, please? Moved by Councillor Faccio, seconded by Councillor Vital. Is there any discussion on that motion to that these minutes be adopted? I don't see any. I'll call the vote. All in favor? And our minutes from those two meetings have been adopted. Item 8 on our agenda. Is there any business arising out of the minutes this evening? I don't see any. Delegations and petitions. There are none this evening, which takes us to item 10, correspondence. Could I have a motion to receive the correspondence A, B, and C? Moved by Councillor Schweinben, seconded by Councillor Jackson. Discussion. Comments on the correspondence. Councillor Schweinben, lead us off.
Thank you, Mayor Tallon. On page 13, the town of Lake Cowichan. This is with regards to Elect Respect pledge.
Pardon me, Mayor Tallon, can we receive this correspondence before we speak to it, please?
Sorry, I got mixed up in the agenda. Yes, with motion to receive the correspondence has been seconded. Before we get to item 11, we should have a vote to receive it. All in favor of receiving the correspondence? And that carries to receive the correspondence. Any opposed? I don't see any opposed. Which takes us to 11, which is business arising from correspondence. Councillor Schweinben, sorry for that. Please continue.
No problem. Thank you, Mayor Tallon. I might have jumped on that a little bit too fast myself. The town of Lake Cowichan sent us a letter, and I think it's sent to every municipality in BC, and I would like to support this. I looked up the Elect Respect Pledge website that they have. I'm happy to say that it was founded out of a place called Burlington, Ontario, which is actually where I grew up. The town of Burlington and Halton District has adopted this, and many other municipalities in Ontario have adopted this. The main focus of this is respect around the council table with staff and in our engagement with public, going both ways, public towards staff and politicians, and the other way around, council towards the public. It encompasses things like social media, many different ways that we can foster respect, and I think this is something that we should support. And I'm not sure, maybe Councillor Vital has an update. Perhaps this has already been given to UBCM for our support. I'm not sure, but I would move that we support this and adopt this as a continuation of our DEI initiatives. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Schweinben. Was there a motion in there or just a discussion at this point?
I see Mayor Vital has some input first. Thank you.
Councillor Vital.
Thank you, Mayor Tallon. I'll make a motion then to respond to the Town of Lake Cowichan letter stressing our endorsement for the resolution that is going to UBCM next month.
Councillor Vital has moved that. Councillor Schweinben, anyone to second that motion? I know you spoke in favor of the same thing, so I look to you if you want.
Yeah, I'll second it. I was thinking we would adopt that, but I think it would require some investigation on our part. And so, yeah, I would second her motion. Thank you.
Seconded the motion. Any discussion on the motion from Councillor Vital? I don't see any further discussion. All in favor of that motion, and that carries. Any other business arising from correspondence? Councillor Schweinbenz.
Thank you, Mayor Talon. I just wanted to alert everyone on page 17. You, Mayor Talon, or we received a letter back from Adrian Dix, Minister of Energy and Climate Solutions. And this is topical for us tonight because we will be discussing a grant for some infrastructure improvements in this exact building. And we were beneficiaries of the Government Climate Action Program. And so I was grateful to see that funding is guaranteed through March 31st of 2027. But anyways, I just think that we should make sure that we keep this in mind when we're discussing I think it's item 15 later on in the evening. And that's it. Thank you.
Yeah, I agree. I would just, not a motion, but just like to acknowledge Minister Dick's writing and confirming continuation of that funding through fiscal year 26-27. So that is appreciated. Any other business arising from the correspondence this evening? I don't see any, so I'll move to reports from councillors, item 12 on our agenda. Who would like to start us off tonight? Any volunteers? Councillor Faccio.
Thank you, Your Worship. I don't have much to report from the regional district to say that I have to commend the staff at the FVRD who since the 3rd of July have been in the EOC continuously there, God knows how many hours. Hope they got some sleep due to the fires at Boston Bar and in that area. They have done an outstanding job. They unfortunately have been criticized on social media unnecessarily, which I think is actually disgraceful that anybody would put any negative remarks on there after the amount of work these people have been carrying out to try and save lives and look after them. I want to just thank them as a director for the outstanding work that they're doing. And I also want to commend and say thank you. I hear today that our firefighters, I think there's 4 of them from Harrison Hot Springs who are at Clinton are on their way to Summerland. And I hope that, I'm sure they've done an outstanding job in helping to put out the terrible fires in that area. And now they're on their way, I believe, to Summerland to try and help out there. So I really commend those, I believe it's 4 that left the village. And God bless them. I hope they stay safe and get back to their families as soon as possible. On the other note in regards to fires, how many people watch our videos? I really don't know, but I'm just going to put it out there that it's very important that with the amount of fires that are now going around in the province, and a lot of them unfortunately are human caused, that whether it's our visitors or residents, please be extremely careful in all our trails and walking areas, especially those those pathways that are behind homes, that if you do happen to be, you shouldn't be, but if you do smoke, please make sure that it's put out and not just thrown down, because that's the cause of many fires. And it's you have to be responsible for yourselves. We have a beautiful community here. Thank God we have wonderful emergency operations people and people on our staff and council, and those with our fire departments and all the others who volunteer to help out in case of an emergency in our community. We're well looked after, but please, those out there, please be extremely careful when you're walking around. And if you see something, please report it. I hope you have a wonderful summer. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Councillor Faccio. we spoke earlier today, and I think other councilors have spoken with me and amongst themselves. Certainly, the events in near Summerland and Falder grabbed everyone's attention, and I echo Councillor Fascio's caution for people to act responsibly and don't inadvertently start fires in the backcountry or in the forests. Enjoy the areas, but please act responsibly. And I know our staff are carefully monitoring the situation with the provincial state of emergency. And as the regional district or the province gives some guidance, we of course will complement any restrictions or anything that is within the village's purview as we go forward in a very dry period in the province. Councillor Vital, over to you.
Thank you, Mayor Talon. Further to this discussion on the fires facing our province, I do know, and I have confirmed with CAO, it has been posted on our website and on social media. The BC Wildfire has now issued a prohibition to all off-road vehicles on Crown land. I think human caused is not necessary on purpose. However, off-road vehicles with their exhaust at times have the potential to spark some fires. And also, I think this is a good time to encourage and remind our residents, if you have not yet downloaded the Alertable app, please do so. It will provide information and it will send out alerts, not only on fires, but traffic issues, road closures. It's a valuable information for our residents. July 14th, I attended the Small Community Forum, which was hosted by the UBCM Small Communities representative, who is from NACUSP. The topic of the discussion centered around a review of UBCM resolutions from smaller communities, including the ones that were submitted by our own council, with the request that small communities support each other's resolutions during the resolution sessions at UBCM. On July 17th, I was invited by UBCM to attend as an observer during their executive board meeting as a bit of an orientation and introduction for newly elected board members. Although new board members do not officially sit until after the UBCM convention next month, I certainly found it a very worthwhile experience. I had the opportunity to be orientated to different committees, and a very worthwhile experience. And other than that, Mayor Talon, a short report from me this evening. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Vital. Councillor Jackson.
Thank you, Your Worship. On a lighter note, sometimes we do need a little bit of levity, or with all this thing going on in our world. Anyway, I'm pleased to report that the Communities in Bloom Garden Tour this year was a huge success. We had quite a few participants. I went to most of them, and I can tell you, this community has absolutely wonderful backyards. It's incredible what people are doing. It is so much innovation, and it is those that don't do it next year, you should take the opportunity to get out. One of our people had a beautiful train set, was just glorious to see. So we're looking forward to that one for next year. We're also in the getting to the ends of our Garden of the Week. Garden of the Week, again, is another success. It
gives us the opportunity to go out there and say to this business or that business or this home or that home, thank you very much for making our community a much more beautiful place to live in. And I'd like to thank all those people involved in helping us do that. I'm just the chairman. We have workers out there that are doing all the good work. And again, thank you. And your worship, that's my report for the night.
Thank you, Councillor Jackson. It's nice to hear that, and thank you for your work leading that committee over the last couple of years. Councillor Schweinmans.
Well, thank you, Mayor Talon. I don't have just a very short report here. I really just wanted to be thankful and grateful to the firemen and fire people that are, all the firefighters throughout the province who are dealing with this extraordinary problem. I think it's going to be something that we're going to see in the future even more of. And as a community, I know that we're working very hard to become more resilient and prepared for evacuations and for emergencies, and some of which we're going to be discussing tonight. So looking forward to learning more about that. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Schweinmans. Item 13 is a report from Mayor. Also a short report from myself. Very happy to have participated in the Harrison Dragon Boat Regatta in July. I think that was a success. There were 66 teams from the province, some from the island, Washington State, and even I think as far as a couple teams from Alberta came out. So busy week. If you've never seen it before, it's sort of a little bit of amazing. All of a sudden there's a tent village for 66 teams of 22 people pop up on the beach, and yeah, and there's races all day long. So that was a really fun event to participate and see that in the village. And thanks to staff for keeping everything tidy with that huge number of people on the beach. I attended the Agassiz Harrison Community Services Annual General Meeting earlier this summer. Good meeting, and then after that there was a board meeting. Lots to report on from Agassiz Harrison Community Services. Each of the team leads gave a presentation on the types of programs they offer. And it's remarkable the impact they have in our community, and how they take care of people, and how those people best some certain programming. Today I was invited to attend as a board representative at their staff meeting, and a great presentation on the TAPS program, TAPS. And I believe if I got the acronym correct, it's Therapeutic Activities Programming for Seniors, and really makes a difference. And they're well attended, and making those connections with seniors so they stay active, stay engaged in their community, and have those social connections. Really nice to see that day-to-day hands-on effect, positive effect in the community. And while I'm talking about Agassiz Harrison Community Services, it's their 50th anniversary this summer, and they will be doing some things around the community fair in Agassiz to mark that event, and so stay tuned. Something to celebrate, I think, for both our community and Agassiz as well, the District of Kent. And that's my whole report. Takes us to 14, reports and minutes from committees and commissions, and I don't believe we have anything there, so we'll go to 15A. And I'm Director of Operations, or am I looking at our Community Services Manager this evening? Over to you.
Thank you, Mayor Talon. This report tonight is to provide council with some information regarding the condition of the existing heating and cooling system here at Memorial Hall, and seek approval to allocate grant funding for replacement of the system. The heating and cooling system here has 2 high-efficiency gas furnaces and 2 5-ton heat pump units that are approximately 16 years old. We've recently attempted some repairs to keep the cooling system operational. However, the equipment does require a full replacement. 1 heat pump has been fully decommissioned, and the 2nd unit is experiencing operational issues and is not functioning at full capacity. As it is operating below capacity, it is unable to effectively maintain indoor temperatures during periods of warm weather and high occupancy. There is also a risk that the remaining heat pump could fail, leaving the facility without air conditioning for the remainder of this summer. So staff have engaged local heating, ventilation, and air conditioning contractors to assess the existing system and provide recommendations and quotations. Based on these assessments, staff are recommending replacing the existing equipment with 2 new 5-ton heat pumps and 2 120,000 BTU high-efficiency gas furnaces. Staff will continue to monitor the performance of this new system to assess the need for any additional cooling throughout the building. If required, some of the contractors have recommended that ductless mini-split units may be installed in areas that could have higher cooling demands. This replacement of the existing furnaces and heat pumps will improve the system's reliability, energy efficiency, airflow, and overall temperature controls. If approved, staff are hopeful that the upgrades can be completed within 1 to 2 weeks. We did experience some issues with it not working over the weekend when we had a rental in here, so we're going to have to be looking at the next few weeks of rentals and events that we have, and hopefully working with the selected contractor to have those repairs done as soon as possible. These upgrades would also improve Memorial Hall's capacity to be a cooling center during periods of extreme heat. So these upgrades would closely align with the objectives of the Local Government Climate Action Program, which supports local government initiatives that improve climate adaptation and resilience. The upgrades would assist in mitigating those risks associated with extreme heat events, consistent with the province's climate preparedness and adaptation strategy. So the recommendation before Council tonight is that Council approve the expenditure of up to $40,000 from the Local Government Climate Action Program grant funding to replace the heating and cooling system at Memorial Hall.
Is there a motion to that effect? Councillor Vital moves, seconded by Councillor Schweinbenz. Discussion on the motion. Councillor Vital.
Thank you, Mayor Tallon. I certainly experienced a difficulty with a lot of concerts that I attended during the festival here last month. And I think this is a necessity, not just a wish. Having said that, through you, Mayor Tallon, to maybe our CAO, in Director of Operations report, he referred to a ductless mini split units, which may be installed in areas with higher cooling demands. Not being an HVAC person, perhaps you could enlighten me on just what that means. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Your Worship, through you to Councillor Vital. If I'm not mistaken, it's a wall mount system that will usually cool smaller rooms, and I mean, it obviously won't be able to keep up to a capacity of a room this size, perhaps the kitchen, maybe the washrooms, but definitely the larger heat pump system with the dual 5-ton system is adequate and has been for 16 years here, and certainly will support for many years to come.
Thank you, CAO Tyson. I support the recommendation, and I think as soon as we can get this underway, the better. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Vital. Councillor Schweinbenz.
Oh, thank you, Mayor Tallon. Through you to staff, a couple of questions. What role does this building play in emergencies as a refuge from heat or smoke, or as an evacuation center? Is this part of our ESS assets in the village? And my second question is, do we have a generator here? Because we could install all this nice equipment, but if power goes out, what are we going to do?
CAO Cook.
Thank you, Your Worship. I'll try and answer, and if I miss something, I'll kick it over to Christy, and she'll smack me and tell me I said something wrong. So this building is a designated emergency support services building. Without the cooling, obviously, that's a bit of a challenge. We have hosted this as a cooling center in the past. It's not particularly designed for that, but it is a listed asset. And there is no backup generation for this building. You'll see further in the agenda here that we're seeking permission to install one over at the village office. That will be something that we'll see in hopefully future opportunities to explore some funding to add some external generation from here.
Thank you, CEO.
Yeah, thank you, Mayor Town. I kind of had thought that, and I'm wondering if maybe this is more of a priority, and I'm wondering if we should see if we can direct staff to looking into a generator, because it might be 3 or 4 years before we get funding for a generator. Maybe we should pull some money out of reserves to power this new equipment. I think this is a very important asset, and the way the world is going, it may actually be used as a cooling center, or as a heating center, or as a refuge during the emergencies. So
I got a smack, so I think I'll have Christy Phil to answer that, hopefully.
Over to you, Community Services Manager.
Thank you, Mayor Tallon. I just wanted to add just some context. Last year, we did upgrade the electrical system here and install a generator transfer switch. So it would now have the possibility to either set up a portable generator or include in a future budget the installation of a permanent one. We had applied for a generator through the ESS grant fund that supports emergency support services projects. However, that one was not successful as the program was heavily oversubscribed this year, and they focused more on communities that hadn't received it in the past.
This grant program, Community Services Manager, will it run again next year? And is it something we could apply for again?
Thanks, Mayor Tallon. The ESS grant, it has typically been running annually, so they haven't announced yet, but I anticipate it will likely be open for applications again in 2027.
Thank you.
thanks, Mayor Talon. So I just want to continue along this line of questioning. I'm wondering if, in our next item, we're going to be talking about a $30,000 grant for Emergency Operations Center. Is it possible to fund both a generator for here and for another purpose, either at the Village Hall or somewhere else? I'm just trying to find a way, because if it'd be great to install this equipment, but in future emergencies, we're likely to lose power, and then all the intended purposes just aren't going to happen. And I think a generator is super important, even if we need to pull it out of reserves or use our the money from the next item that we're going to be talking about. So I guess I should have a motion to direct staff to report back to council as to the financial impact or possibility of putting in a generator at this location in a timely fashion.
Pardon me, Mayor Tallon, we do have an existing motion that's on the floor right now to approve this expenditure. If this is something that we'd like to consider after the fact, then that's fine, or we defeat this one, add a new one. So it's up to however council would like to move forward.
Councillor Swinebens, would you be okay just withdrawing your motion temporarily, and we can deal with the motion on the floor and then come back to the generator?
Yeah, I'm fully
capacity?
supportive of this current motion. I just think I'd like to take it to the next step. I think we should take it to the next step.
Okay, well,
Thank you.
I'll give you an opportunity to move something after we deal with the original motion. Any other discussion on the original motion? Councillor Faccio.
Just through your worship to our CEO, now, do we not have a backup portable generator?
Yes, Your Worship, through you to Councillor Fascio, we do have 2 portable generators currently in our stock.
So they could be used in case of emergency. Thank you.
That is correct.
Thank you, Councillor Faccio and CEO Cook. Any other discussion on the motion? I see none. I'll call the vote. All in favor? And that carries. New information just from Councillor Faccio's questions. Councillor Swinebens, is there a motion you'd like to make at this time regarding generators?
Yeah, I'd like to move to direct staff to report back to council in a timely fashion regarding a permanent capable gas-fired generator for this location. Thank you.
Motion from Councillor Schweinman. Is there a seconder to that motion? Councillor Jackson. Are you seconding the motion? Seconding the motion. Thank you, Councillor Jackson. Discussion on the motion. Councillor Vital.
Thank you, Mayor Talon. Through you to our CAO, the two portable generators that you mentioned, would they suffice with being able to power the Memorial Hall here, if need be?
CAO Cook.
Thank you, Your Worship, through you to Councillor Vital. I do believe so, within a limited capacity, of course. Obviously, the whole building itself is going to require more power. The one main thing to understand is that one of the two will be assisting in the event of a long power outage. It'll be assisting our lift stations that we have. A number of our lift stations and critical infrastructure already have generation on site. But certainly to be able to station a portable generator here for an extended period of time could support what we need for this building.
Thank you.
Any other discussion on the motion? Councillor Schweinman.
Yeah, if I look at real-world issues, I think this community suffers a lot of blackouts, a lot of disruptions in hydro. Sometimes it's only for a couple of hours. Sometimes we've had it several times for a day or overnight. And I think if we're going to use this for its intended purposes, as a cooling system, as a refuge, as an evacuation center, that we ought to have it up to the standards and able to serve as that function no matter what happens with power. So I'm hoping to this passes. Thank you.
I'm in favor of the motion in the sense that I think Councillor Schweinman's raised a good point, and I think we have, if staff can give us a report back whether this is a budget item for the next year and a priority in that sense, or whether there's the likelihood of success through a grant application through that other program. And just get a report back. Be nice to have a go-forward plan sometime next year for this. So I do support the motion to get some advice from staff on this. Any other discussion? I see none. I'll call the vote. All in favor? And that carries. Thank you. We're on to 15B, report from Community Services Manager. Over to you.
Thank you, Mayor Talon. This report is to provide council with information on an approved grant application and seek authorization to expend the funds in 2026. In February of this year, staff applied to UBCM's Community Emergency Preparedness Fund for the Emergency Operations Center's equipment and training stream. The approved project will build on the previous years of successful grant funding and allow for the purchase and installation of an automatic natural gas generator at the village office. This will support business continuity and effective emergency response in the event of an emergency that results in a loss of power. In June of 2026, staff were informed that the application was successful and a grant of $30,000 was approved. This secured funding was not known prior to the adoption of the 2026 financial plan. Therefore, staff require a resolution of council to authorize the expenditures. So the recommendation before you is that council authorize up to $30,000 in expenditures to support the village's 2026 Emergency Operations Center grant project to be funded through an approved grant source. Thank you.
A motion to that effect. Moved by Councillor Vital, the seconder, Councillor Jackson. Discussion? Councillor Schweinman.
Thank you, Mayor Talon. I did not know until the last couple of days and was informed by staff that our village office doesn't have a backup generator. I was really surprised to hear that, and there's no question that the village office needs a backup generator. And whether it comes from this grant or another source, I think it's super, super important. There's servers in there, there's confidential information. Our staff simply can't work if we have these extended and frankly, quite frequent power outages. So I'm supportive of getting a generator there. My only concern is the use of this particular funding. Now, I understand and I'm congratulate our staff in getting this grant, but my understanding that is it is specifically through UBCM for operations centers. And I just want to make sure that we're not hurting the integrity of our grant writing process by using this money for an unintended purpose. So I just want to make sure that our village office has a role to play in the operations center when there is an emergency. So maybe staff can explain that role. Thank you.
CAO Cook, or Community Services Manager, the Emergency Operations Center in the village office and this grant. Can you provide a little clarity for council?
Absolutely, and again, if I get a smack, I'll pass it over to Christy. But what I did, there was a question from Councillor Schweinbenz earlier today about this very item. And I did send a note to council showing how and why this was approved. This was selected and approved for funding through this grant. And I'll read verbatim in what we put in our application. A generator will be purchased and installed to support the effective operation of an EOC within the village of Harrison Hot Springs. Electrical upgrades have been completed thanks to previous grant funding, with the purchase of a generator being the final remaining step required in order for the village's EOC to effectively operate in the event of an emergency impacting power supply. The village office houses critical information on our servers to support both effective emergency response and business continuity process. Now, it's very important to understand that an EOC doesn't need to be in a space. It can be anywhere. It can be activated at any place. Now, we have designated our fire hall as our EOC in the event of an emergency. And this is just an additional critical piece to supporting the EOC that we have established at the village's fire department, or fire hall, I should say.
Thank you, CAO Cook. Anything else?
Yeah, I think that's fantastic. It supports why we're doing this. I'm not sure of the process of what happens during an emergency. I'm glad our staff are on top of that. I had thought that during an emergency, we're all kind of congregating at the fire hall or at the EOC, if you will. But if the village office is being used as described, then that sounds good too. My neighbor asked today, what happens with communications when there's a power outage? Because when there's a power outage, we all lose our SHA, our internet. Does that happen at the office as well? I'm kind of curious if we've got a workaround for that.
I have a feeling the answer involves our Alertable app, but
Yeah.
CAO Cook, can you answer that?
Yeah, thank you, Your Worship, through you to Councillor Schweinbenz. So Alertable is part of our infrastructure, obviously, if our response, emergency response. And we need power to access for our computers and our server and Wi-Fi and such. Now, our system, as far as I know, is related to, it's not necessarily hardwired. It can be through cellular, so it's not necessarily only SHA. Now, I could be wrong, but I'm pretty sure it comes through an aerial, a cellular feed.
Councillor Faccio. Oh, sorry. Oh. Yes, Councillor Faccio.
Yeah, I believe the District of Kent are the last year that they put in a massive big generator for the running of their office, and also if it's needed for the Emergency Operations Center as well. So, I mean, whether the fire hall has one or not, you still need the backup of the village staff to continue with the services of the village to the best they can. And if everything is operable, they can carry on with that. And the village office will probably get an awful lot of phone calls before they start calling the EOC. number to ask what's going on. Are we okay? When am I going to be moved and everything else? So I think it's important that the village office has the backup generator then, whether that office stays as it is or another office is built, whatever the case may be, at least we have that generator there to service the day-to-day operations of the village. Thank you.
I don't see any further discussion. I'll call a vote on the motion. All in favor of the motion, and that carries unanimously. Item C, 15C. Again, over to you, Community Services Manager and Geese Management.
Thank you, Mayor Tallon. So this report presents the 2026 Canada Goose Nesting Survey for the Harrison Hot Springs Results Summary Report, which was prepared by EBB Environmental Consulting, and to discuss any potential next steps. So the village contracted EBB Environmental Consulting to conduct nesting surveys on village-owned lands at the recommended timeline, which was between March and May of this year. The finding report is attached for information. This survey found that there were few active nests within the village-owned lands, with the majority of activity occurring on private properties, including marina infrastructure, private docks, and other shoreline areas. While the local nesting activity was minimal, the village did continue to experience a high seasonal goose presence, reflecting the area's suitability as feeding, resting, and molting habitat. These high numbers of geese observed in the village during June were also seen in many other communities as Canada geese underwent their annual molts. This molting process is where the geese shed and regrow their flight feathers, leaving them temporarily unable to fly for several weeks. It's during these times that we see them gathering in large numbers near the shorelines and grassy areas, and using the lake as a place of safety and the green spaces. This is when we see the increase in goose species along the beach, and our team struggles to keep up with their methods of cleaning that. So the consulting's report highlighted that the management of geese is a long-term undertaking and that no single technique will provide immediate relief. The report also noted that population management will require regional collaboration, particularly given that geese move freely between jurisdictions and utilize both municipal and crown lands. One of the recommendations identified in the report was nest management. Through an approved nest management program, eggs can be humanely addled under authorization provided through the Migratory Birds Convention Act, following specific protocols. As previously reported by staff in an earlier council report, both Cultus Lake and the City of Abbotsford utilize egg addling as a tool to manage their geese populations on public lands. Correspondence from representatives at Cultus Lake earlier indicated that egg addling combined with selective hazing and public education have had a positive impact in their community. While nest management alone is not expected to significantly reduce geese populations, it may be an effective component of a broader coordinated management strategy involving neighboring jurisdictions and provincial agencies. EBB Environmental Consulting facilitates training workshops on egg addling and the corresponding permit process. In other communities, this work is typically coordinated by volunteer organizations. Staff are recommending that the Environmental Advisory Committee work with other local environmental organizations to recruit volunteers for this program. And for the Crown Lands and regional approach, as the deadline to request a meeting with ministry staff was on August 5th, staff have in advance submitted a request to follow along with tonight's motion, which can be canceled if council does not wish to meet with them on that topic at UBCM. So there are 3 recommendations before you tonight. Would you like them all together, or the first 2 are kind of a bit more of a package? If you'd like, I can read those 2 to start.
Maybe just take them one at a time, just in case there's discussion. Thank you.
The first recommendation, Your Worship.
First recommendation moved by Councillor Faccio, seconded by Councillor Jackson. Any discussion on that? We'll write a letter. I will call the vote. All in favor of writing a letter to the minister responsible for Canada geese. The second one, a meeting with the ministry staff at UBCM conference this year. Moved by Counselor Vital, seconded by Counselor Jackson. Any discussion on that? I see none. I'll call the vote. All in favor, and we will take that meeting. Thank you, staff, for anticipating that and arranging that for us. And last, coordination with the Environmental Advisory Committee, a motion to that effect. Moved by Counselor Vital, seconded by Counselor Schweinbanz, our chair of that committee. Any discussion on that motion? I saw Counselor Faccio, and then I'll go to Counselor Vital and then Schweinbanz.
Thank you, Worship. Number one, good luck. Number two, several years ago, and it worked. We cannot do it on the beach for obvious reasons, liability issues. But in Spring Park, from the Fred Hardy Bridge all the way around the perimeter to Lillooet, we installed a chicken wire fence, and the geese never stayed in the Miami River. They never moved. What it is, I don't know, but it worked. So if we could round them all up and put them in my Miami River, there's your answer. But of course, that's not going to happen. But just something to think about, that we can't do it on the beach. Obviously, it's too long and liability issues, people tripping over. But it did work in Spring Park, and the geese did not come across the road or through the park and all that business. Just wanted to throw that one in. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Faccio. Councillor Vital.
Thank you, Mayor Tallon. This last recommendation, I know the concern with addling of the eggs is the very difficult process of locating where the nests are, not only around the village on private property, but also up on Crown land surrounding the lake. So I think it would require considerable number of volunteers to be able to undertake that kind of initiative to locate the nests. I also wonder too about private property. If indeed we were able to recruit volunteers, we would have to, I believe, get permission to be able to access private properties to do the addling. So I do think there's kind of more to this than just saying this is the absolute right method to reduce geese population. But I will support that recommendation and look forward to next year's staff coming back with some more particulars. Thank you, Mayor Tallon.
Thank you, Councillor Vital. Councillor Schweinbanz, comment on it?
Yeah, thank you for the referral back to the Environmental Committee. I think it's going to be I agree with Councillor Vidal. It's going to be a lot of effort to mitigate this and not just addling eggs. Like you said, they're hard to find, these nests. They're not doing it on the waterfront, unfortunately. It'd be a lot easier if they were. But I hear that some municipalities have started growing their grass longer because the geese then can't find what they're looking for in the bottom of the lawn. So there's going to be a bunch of different things, including the education and I think they call it the hazing that they do at Cultus Lake. Maybe we need to look into that. Letting people run their dogs out every morning to scare the geese away. Maybe that's an idea. So, but I also think, this requires a larger discussion. That is what these geese are doing, and that is fouling. Among many other factors, they contribute to the fouling of the lagoon. And I'd like to see us have a more robust conversation about that lagoon health, and maybe trying again to get that opened up to the lake at some point. That'll help out the health of the water. So I'm supportive of this, whatever we can do to help out. Thank you.
Councillor Jackson.
Thank you, Worship. I just have one little comment. It's a little bit different. I look at it this way. Any bird that's that big can run along the water, flap the wings and get himself airborne, he or she, whatever they are, into the air. They know how to adapt. They've been doing this for a long, long, long time. And just think of the dynamics of doing that. So quite frankly, I think whatever you're going to try, you're just going to be spinning wheels. We tried it so many times, it didn't work. So I don't really know whether you want to put that much effort into it, because they're still going to be here. They're a national bird. They're protected under the Wild Bird Species Act. So I just caution you, the end result will not be what you maybe want to achieve. Thank you, Your Worship.
Councillor Patcham.
Yeah, I fully move ahead with the recommendation. When I say good luck, I mean good luck, because we've tried the dogs, we've tried the hoses. I don't like snakes, and we tried the sirens. We had a siren in the bandstand, and we tried that. It didn't work. They're very clever, those geese. And I always say to people, they were here before us, those geese. But many, many years ago, they decided in Vancouver at Stanley Park to move most of the geese down to the Fraser Valley, which they did. And Stanley Park, they can addle the eggs because they can find them. But like Councillor Vidal said, it's virtually impossible to find where the eggs are here. So it's, I fully support the recommendation, but again, a very good luck how you're going to deal with this, because it's, I think the best we can do is what we do with our pooper scuba, which, by the way, we did put ours in place many years before Parksville. Parksville claimed that they were the first, so I just want to let you know that.
Thank you for the lively discussion. I take a little bit of optimism from staff reports that some of their actions have had a positive effect at Cultus Lake. So hoping that can be replicated here, and we don't, this isn't just a flight of fancy. I'll call the vote. All in favor of the motion, and we will fire up our Environmental Advisory Committee and some volunteers to work with staff and see if we can get licensed to addle these eggs and make an impact. 15D, my goodness, Community Services Manager again, over to you.
Thank you, Mayor Tallon. For some background information on this report, the village is one of 14 designated resort municipalities in the province. Being part of the Resort Municipality Initiative, or RMI program, means that financial support is available for projects that support building and diversifying tourism infrastructure, deliver exceptional visitor experiences, and incorporate sustainable tourism practices and products. Every 3 years, a new resort development strategy, or RDS, is drafted and submitted to the province with specific projects and events that will be funded through the program. During the Parks and Trails Master Plan process, community feedback suggested adding amenities to village parks, including the discussion of a splash pad. A splash pad can function as not only a recreational amenity, but also as a climate adaptation measure by providing a space for cooling. This feedback provided insight into the creation of the village's 2025 to 2027 RDS. In early 2025, the village's RDS committee provided feedback on proposed projects to be completed during the current funding term. While the focus of the RMI program is tourism, a survey was posted on Get Into It Harrison to allow for input from the community on the RDS projects. One of those projects that was selected for submission, endorsed by council, and approved by the province was a splash pad. In spring of this year, the village issued a request for proposals for a design-build splash pad project. In alignment with the village's purchasing and procurement policy, Habitat System was selected as the successful proponent, and a site visit was conducted with their team. The original location imagined for the splash pad was at the beachfront near the recently installed accessible playground. However, upon the site meeting and review of the civil work required, as well as the potential impacts that the sand environment could have on the splash pad system, it was identified that a different location would be better suited. Habitat Systems did an overview of the community and identified Spring Park as an ideal option for substantial cost savings on civil works, more direct utility connections, and lower maintenance costs. Site selection at Spring Park adjacent to the current playground maintains the usage of the park with what already exists. The splash pad would operate seasonally from approximately May through September, and the system would have a timer that would be set with the standard park hours of operation. After the project was awarded, there were additional timeline and permitting requirements identified for Fraser Health approval. So final design, including specific splash pad features, must be submitted as part of the permit process. This changed the timeline of when project expenditures were expected to be incurred, and therefore requires council's approval to commit to spending more of those funds in 2026. Prior to the Fraser Health application being submitted this fall, staff are seeking community input on proposed splash pad features and design. In order to highlight the project area, staff are recommending an engagement event be hosted at Spring Park to showcase the project and gather input from the community on the design. This project will be supported through the Resort Municipality Initiative funding with no current support outlined through property taxes or reserves. Moving forward, there would be regular maintenance costs that would be worked into the operating budget and are anticipated to be minimal for staff time for cleaning and safety inspections, as with other play spaces. The proposed engagement event would be funded through the existing community events budget. The policy considerations there are tied to the 2025 Parks and Trails Master Plan, the 2025 to 2027 Resort Development Strategy, as well as Council's strategic priority for a healthy, livable community. The first recommendation before Council is that staff host an engagement event in Spring Park to highlight the footprint of the splash pad and seek feedback from families on features they would like to see included through this event and the Villages Get Into It Harrison engagement platform.
Move first recommendation, Your Worship.
Moved by Councilor Faccio, seconded by Councilor Jackson. Discussion on that. Councilor Faccio.
Thank you, Your Worship. Fully support this. It's a great idea, and it's been discussed for some time now. Obviously they're going to have get some input from the public in Spring Park on this, but my original, when we passed this originally, and I read the report here regarding problems maybe with the sand if it was near the beach area, but as this is part of the Resort Municipality Initiative funding, which is both for residents and for tourists or visitors, whichever way you want to call it, that it's going to be pretty restrictive in Spring Park. I mean, Spring Park has a very small parking lot, which restricts it tremendously. There also, it has, although we did put a washroom there, a limited size washroom. So if this became the main place for the splash park to be erected, it would have to have a concrete pad as well. It doesn't leave an awful lot of space in that green area to the north of the ping pong table for people to play ball games or whatever else they want to play. So it's just a caution that obviously we're going to get the feedback from the meeting at the park at some point, but it's just that I still think the best they have it in Parksville, they have it in their community park, which is close to the ocean, and it works very well. They obviously, the splash park would only operate probably from May to September here, so I don't think there would be a lot of problems with the sand situation, to be perfectly honest, but I'm not an expert on that. And we do have water connections there, but I think it'd be up for further discussion, but I fully support, I thank the staff for a great report and bringing this forward, and I'll be looking forward to see what comes out of the meeting in Spring Park. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor Faccio. Councilor Vital.
Thank you, Mayor Talon. Reading this report from staff, I must say I'm disappointed. I share Councillor Facio's view that I'm not sure Spring Park is the best location for the splash pad. And I have a couple of different reasons. It would require families that come to Harrison to enjoy the beach. They would have to leave the beach area and come over to Spring Park to access the splash pad. And also, I think we need to keep in mind that there's very limited parking at Spring Park. I would encourage our staff, when it comes to discussion about the design, and see if the possibility to minimize the issue with the sand can be incorporated somehow into the design. Having said that, I'm very happy to see our staff going to reach out and have some public engagement. And if that takes place at Spring Park, so be it. But I would be cautious at this stage with approving it at Spring Park without looking at some other options and alternatives down at the beachfront. Thank you, Mayor Talon.
Thank you, Councillor Vital. Councillor Schweinmans.
Thank you, Mayor Talon. Just to continue on with my fellow councillors here, I agree and share some of the concerns. I've never seen the District of Kent splash pad, and I was there today and looked like the kids were having a lot of fun. Must have been 25, 30 kids there. You know, if you don't mind the sound of giggling kids, I think would be fine wherever it's located. I was kind of very much opposed to the idea of of it being located at Spring Park, but I think I could be swayed. The issue that I have, to be totally honest with you, is that I think this, you know, the RDS committee was struck to devise ways, and my counselor to the right of me started this group, so please correct me if I'm wrong, but they were struck to devise ways to improve and increase and enhance tourism infrastructure. And we all think of tourism infrastructure as along the waterfront. So this is certainly a departure from that. And if I had looked at the notes and the minutes from the meetings that the RDS committee had earlier last year before we approved this $400,000, it wasn't just implied, it was that this splash pad would be on the waterfront. And now it's not. So I think the scope of this idea and of this vision has changed, and I think this needs to somehow be referred back to the RDS before this goes too much further. Wondering if there's support for that. I will. That would be my idea. I do believe it needs to go back to the RDS.
Thank you, Councillor Schweinmans. Councillor Jackson, a comment.
Thank you, Worship. I'm just going to take a little different tact here. I like the idea of the splash pad for children. And we live in a community which is based on tourism. And quite often, the residents sort of get left out on things. The advantage of having it in Spring Park, it tells me that many of the people who live here with small children can walk down to there and have a nice time. On the beach, they may not be able to do that. They may, because of the fact that all the parking is gone, the beach is very, very crowded. Sometimes we just have to sit back and say, you know, we have to make sure that we include everybody in this. The RMI money if it allows us to do that, I think we've got to really seriously think about it and put it in Springs Park. Thank you, Your Worship.
Thank you, Councillor Jackson. I'm in favor of the recommendation. Let's get reaction from the village. I think that'll be valuable. To Councillor Schweinband's comment about the Resource Development Strategy Committee, that's, as my understanding, is no longer active. It's disbanded and will reform if there's another round of funding from the province to support that. So there isn't a committee to send it back to at this time. I think when I look at Spring Park, I see demands on Spring Park, off-leash dog park, and now we might think about adding a splash pad. I think the overall vision for Spring Park, I think we need to step back and look at it and make sure all these things are going to fit and doesn't create some unintended consequences. I do note that every time I go by the accessible beach, you're hard pressed to find a time of day where there isn't during daylight where you don't see kids in the playground. They're there almost all the time in almost any weather. I think the natural place for a splash park is near there, and I guess what's not in the report is what exactly are the nature of the engineering challenges and limits, and perhaps we should ask staff for a more full report to understand why a shift in location and those kind of things. And I see CAO Cook has his hand up. I would prefer it to be on the waterfront, sort of to complement the accessible playground, but also need to understand the practical realities of whether or not that's possible. So maybe CAO Cook, a little more information for us.
Yes, thank you very much, Your Worship. Initially, when we discussed it, yes, that was kind of the hope and thought. But when you look at the space that it would take, it would be very compact in a very busy location. Aside from the safety concerns with respect to that, the engineering concern is what we have allocated right now wouldn't fund it, because the existing infrastructure that we have there is just even to explore to find water is going to be a challenge. We're going to be ripping up infrastructure that we've just put down. And on top of that, we have a dike project that's going to be coming through there very shortly. We looked at this as an opportunity to pull away from the waterfront and perhaps, like Councillor Jackson noted, put it into our community park where it could be accessed by more residents comfortably. I do recognize the challenge in parking. Sure, the parking off Bear is quite small, but there's also Echo, and then Lillooet has additional parking. The thought was that you could have a much bigger, easier space. It's an existing use. You have children using the playground. There's going to be the covered structure there. It's more of an activity hub. Now, throughout this process, visiting other RMI communities, that's what they've been doing. Is we've seen infrastructure like this put in more of a residential type setting. I recognize again that a lot of our infrastructure is down on the waterfront, and all very, very good investment and has served very well. But I just think that we can get more bang for our buck if it does go to Spring Park, because of the engineering challenges, the safety issues, all of those things that I had noted earlier. But again, I mean, if council doesn't think that's a good idea, then you can certainly refer it back to staff and we can come back with a different idea. But I think that this is something that certainly should be explored further, just because of its, for safety reasons, cost, and the community benefit.
Thank you, CAO Cook. I'm going to need some more convincing for, I'd have to, I have a strong preference to have it on the beach somewhere if there was a place that could be found for that. But I am supportive of the recommendation to Yeah, well, if we're gonna have, if the one potential option is in Spring Park, then we should get some village feedback on that. Maybe we'll hear some other things about other ideas as well. Seeing no further discussion, I'll call the vote on the motion. All in favor of the motion? And that carries. There's a second part of the motion. Council allocate an additional $400,000 of RMI funding to the splash pad project and authorize the expenditure in 2026. Moved by Councillor Faccio, seconded by Councillor Jackson. Discussion on that. Councillor Schweibetz.
Mayor Talon, I would move to defer this. Let's find out what the families and the community say about the idea and then decide on releasing the funds. That would be my recommendation. And I will comment too that I've spoken to honestly just a couple of communities, Revelstoke and Whistler. They have their RDS committees going continuously with new members and new ideas, and maybe that's something we need to look at. The scope of our RDS committee should be perhaps continuous, so that we can come up with these ideas and that we can address things like this. Now, two of the major ideas that we had just a year ago, the splash pad is now potentially changing locations. The idea of potentially doing a Frisbee golf facility in the east sector, that's again, may or may not happen depending on the agricultural land reserve. So it would be nice if this committee was still available, that we could discuss the changing and fluid conditions of the funding and of these ideas. So anyways, that's my I'm just waxing on about that, but I will have a motion here to defer the second recommendation to release the funds.
Thank you, Councillor Schweimans. Just so I understand your motion to defer, is that defer indefinitely or defer to help me understand the time frame?
Thank you. Until such a time as staff report back to council on the community engagement results. Thank you.
I'll second the motion to defer. I think it's jumping the gun until we have confidence in the location and we can go forward from there. I'll second that motion to defer. Any discussion on the motion to defer? Councillor Vital.
Thank you, Mayor Talon. I'm just looking for some clarification on the most recent motion. Am I correct in the motion is to defer the allocation of additional $400,000 until such time as staff comes back to council with some further information on costing and location of the splash pad? Is that correct?
If I understood Councillor Schweimans, yeah, deferred until the work and the first recommendation is complete. We hear from the village and we get a little bit more information and hopefully, from my point of view, settle on the location before we start allocating funds.
Thank you.
Did I capture that correctly, Councillor Schweimans?
Yeah, thank you, Mayor Talon. Yeah, the spirit of it is just not let the genie out of the bottle yet until we find out all this information from the community.
Any other discussion on the motion to defer? I don't see any. I'll call the vote. All in favor of deferring this? 3 in favor, opposed. Councillor Jackson, opposed. The motion carries. Community Service Manager, back to you, 15E. So this might be your last one on the agenda, I think.
Thank you, Mayor Talon. So this report is just to present some initial findings based on a previous resolution of council regarding a cenotaph installation within the village of Harrison Hot Springs. So staff are also just looking for a bit more clarification on their desired scope of this project, and we'll be presenting an additional idea for consideration. So it was at the May 19th regular council meeting when a resolution was passed that included staff being directed to investigate the purchase and erecting of a cenotaph outside a memorial hall through engagement with Royal Canadian Legion Branch 32. So staff reached out to their contacts from the Royal Canadian Legion Branch 32 regarding the council resolution. And the representative shared that there is not a formal process from the Legion standpoint that communities need to follow when they wish to install a cenotaph. They provided some great background information, though, on how a traditional cenotaph often includes the names of local residents who were killed in military service. This research process to identify Harrison Hot Springs residents may be difficult and could result in accidental omissions or discrepancies. As well, determining the qualifications of a local veteran can at times be complicated. Some communities around the province have taken a broader approach to their cenotaph design. An example of this is in place in the resort municipality of Whistler, with a picture included in the report. This cenotaph has a plaque on each side and includes portions of the message in both English and French. This community memorial style of monument would recognize all veterans, not only those who died in service. Staff are requesting that council provide a more detailed vision of the style of cenotaph in order for a better report back on options and cost estimates. Recently, the District of Kent collaborated with the Royal Canadian Legion Branch 32 to install a veterans crosswalk leading to their cenotaph. An image captured by the Agassiz Harrison Observer is included in this report as well for a reference. This is an additional option that council could consider for the crossing outside Memorial Hall along Esplanade Avenue at Maple Street. So the costs for a cenotaph also vary greatly depending upon the project materials and scope. For a granite cenotaph monument with the plaque, initial estimates are around $20,000. As this item was not included in the 2026 financial plan, staff would recommend that any council decisions be included in the budget planning and deliberation process for 2027. Additionally, staff could seek out any potential grant opportunities that could be applicable. The Government of Canada has one program called the Commemorative Partnership Program, which provides funding for projects that recognize Canadian veterans and those who died in service. This grant is an opportunity to seek funding of up to $10,000 to support projects of this type if successful. So based on that information, the recommendation before you is that staff report back with specific options and cost estimates for a community memorial cenotaph with a commemorative plaque and a veterans crosswalk at Esplanade Avenue and Maple Street for consideration in the 2027 financial plan.
With the recommendation, Your Worship.
Moved by Councillor Faccio, seconded by Councillor Vital. Discussion and, yeah, Councillor Vital.
Thank you, Mayor Tallon. I was pleased to bring this resolution forward. As I stated, that I think Memorial Hall is an ideal place for some memorial cenotaph. So I appreciate the staff report. It does appear that there is probably limited space around Memorial Hall. So I think we're probably not going to be able to put in a large one, which is fine, as long as it does indicate and thank those that have given their lives in service. So I support the recommendation. I also noticed that you're requesting maybe some design suggestions from council. I would encourage council to research that and send it forward to our community services manager. But I certainly look forward to this project getting underway. Thank you, Mayor Tallon.
Thank you, Councillor Vital. Councillor Faccio.
Thank you, Your Worship. Fully support. Wonderful idea. Whether it's a large stone or a nice wood carving, Councillor Vital said that it doesn't have to be that very big, but and I like the idea of the crosswalk as well. But I believe that to identify all veterans is the appropriate way to go, because I'm not sure that that there was a veteran from Harrison Hot Springs. Not that I read in the history books anyway, to be perfectly honest, but that doesn't matter. It could have been a cousin, or maybe there was somewhere down the line. But I think to identify all veterans, because there's been several wars beside the First World War, and that in 2007, if this goes through, that I would ask the staff, lots of time, next year, 2007, if it would, to speak to the Legion, if it would be possible for Harrison to have its own Remembrance Day here. I think we could hold it. It doesn't need a tremendous amount of volunteers. I normally get the cadets. Used to be the army, now it's the cadets who stand on guard, and we do, just needs, doesn't have to be a big procession like Agassiz, but I think it'd be very appropriate that if we're going this far, that maybe we should have our own ceremony on November the 11th in Harrison, and I would look as a veteran myself, I would certainly look forward to that. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Faccio. Other comments? Councillor Jackson.
Thank you, Worship. The first reeve, I like to call it, was the colonel. So we do have some veterans here that were either in the First or Second World War. Just a little note, I tried for many years to get this, and I'm so thankful that Councillor Liddell brought it up, and here we are on the cusp of having it approved. I'm looking forward to it. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Jackson. Councillor Swinburne.
Thank you, Mayor Talon. I am supportive of the resolution. I just wondering if, again, maybe we should expand this a little bit. And I've always brought my family to the Memorial Day parades and ceremonies, and I think it's important to remember. But I'm just wondering if we should envision, because staff were looking for some more input on some different ideas. And I see a cenotaph, but I also see a peace garden, a place where we can celebrate not just wars, but all conflicts throughout the world, including conflicts that happened over hundreds of years here with First Nations and that sort of thing. The wars later in the generations don't resonate as much as young people, and I would like to see us remember the services and sacrifices of people for our country, but also to foster future peace and collaboration throughout the world. And I just envision adding some kind of a peace garden or peace bench or something like that that encourages people to look at all these conflicts throughout the world in a different way, and to foster collaboration and acceptance of all cultures and ethnicities and creeds from throughout the world. We get tourists from all over the world. So anyways, if staff is looking for feedback from me, I'd like to see it go the next step, so that future generations, 100 years from now, can see this as a peace garden as well. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Swinburne. I like this idea. I would lean to granite, and I echo Councillor Faccio's comments about acknowledging all veterans. I think risks of missing someone or identifying someone, that would be an inadvertent, and I think acknowledging all veterans that have served our country in various conflicts around the world. I also like the idea of the crosswalk and the paint. I think I've seen that in another community or two, and I think that would complement the area as well. Favor the motion, looking at staff and looking to see if that is sufficient information for you to return with some ideas in a report.
Thank you, Mayor Talon. Yes, I was just mainly looking for that confirmation on a community memorial as opposed to the more traditional format. And this will give staff some great direction to come back with more details for council's consideration.
Thank you, Community Services Manager. Seeing no further discussion, I'll call the vote. All in favor? And we all very much look forward to that next report. Thank you. That takes us to 16 on our agenda, 16A, and Mr. Cossey, our planning consultant here. Over to you.
Thank you, Your Worship. We're dealing with two bylaws tonight. The first one we're going to be looking at is the Board of Variance bylaw. And I'd just like to say that since I've been here, in 2016 to 2026, we have never had an application under the current bylaw for your Board of Variance. So why do we need one then? Well, the Local Government Act says that if you have a zoning bylaw in place, you must have a Board of Variance. So the first time you had a Board of Variance, I believe, was in 1976, and you've just been repeating it ever since then. And I believe the last time you actually used that Board of Variance was 1988. So local governments in British Columbia that have adopted a zoning bylaw as per Section 536 of the Local Government Act are required to establish one or more Board of Variances to provide a process for applicants seeking relief under certain provisions where compliance would cause undue hardship. A Board of Variance basically acts like a development variance permit, but it addresses hardship matters, particularly where the issue relates to the siting, size, or dimensions of buildings and structures. So what do we mean by a hardship issue? For example, if my parcel of land was 90% covered by a swamp and I've only got 10% left and I can't follow any of your requirements through your legislation, your tree cutting bylaws, your subdivision servicing bylaw, I would go to the Board of Variance to seek relief. Unfortunately, what's happened in the past is a lot of boards of variances said that you can appeal a decision. A Board of Variance is not an appeal process. You're going to the Board of Variance to specifically seek relief. So what is the role of the Board of Variance? Well, they consider very narrow hardship based requests, as I just made an indication on. If my parcel of land is 90% covered by a swamp, I've got 10% left, how do I abide by the rules and regulations? I have to seek relief. Maybe I'll get it, maybe I won't. Board of Variance does not change permitted land uses or densities, does not defeat the intent of the zoning bylaw, and it keeps the minor variance decisions separate from council's broader land use policy role. It does not, when the Board of Variance meets, their recommendations does not come to the council table, nor is the council even involved in that process. There's an individual request that a Board of Variance gets started. They fill out the application form, staff looks at it and says, yes, there's a hardship, no, there isn't a hardship, but still the applicant has to prove whatever this hardship's going to be. They go through that Board of Variance process. The Board of Variance says yes or no to it. That decision can be appealed to the provincial court system. So a clear Board of Variance process supports procedural fairness, consistency, transparency, it's in legal compliance, it's an efficient service delivery, and it looks at risk management issues. So when I was talking about relief, what are we looking at really? Well, we're seeking relief from 4 types of regulations. That's your zoning bylaw, that's the tree cutting bylaw, that's your subdivision servicing requirements, or alterations or additions to any building or structures deemed to be non-conforming use. And this can also include when the building inspector goes out, let's say there's a fire on my property and my dwelling structure burns to the ground and it damages the foundation. The magic number inside the Local Government Act is 75%. If it's 75% damaged, then I have to follow by the new rules, zoning requirements, or whatever the new rules are. If it's under that 75%, then I can go back to the old rules that I first built it with. That 75% is also, the applicant can say, well, the building inspector was wrong, it's not 75%, it's only 50%. And then they provide their evidence. The Board of Variance looks at it and says, yes, you're right, or no, we support the building inspector. So again, the key word that we're looking at here is relief. So the Board of Variance, bylaw number 1247, 2026, what does it do? It establishes the membership of the Board of Variance. It lays out the application requirements. It lays out the hearing procedures and notice requirements, and it identifies the decision-making process and record-keeping obligations of the local Board of Variance. One of the things that we're looking at, for example, is on the definition section, we're talking about an applicant. How have we defined an applicant for the Board of Variance? And this is deemed as an individual or organization that formally applies to seek relief due to hardship, including those 4 bullets as already there. But you'll notice that the key word in each of these bullets is relief, relief, relief. Similar to what we do with the Board of or the Development Variance Permit, but this is because there's a hardship associated with that parcel of land. You see, we've also got new definition of the board. It means the Village of Harrison Hot Springs Board of Variance. We're talking about what a board clerk is. We're talking about what a hearing is. And we're talking about the village means the Village of Harrison Hot Springs. So wrapped up, I forgot to move this PowerPoint along. My apologies. So basically, the board membership consists of three individuals appointed by council. So how did we arrive at that figure 3? Well, in the legislation, if your population in the municipality is less than 25,000, you have 3 members on the Board of Variance. If they're over 25,000, you have 5 members. Because we're under the 25,000 category, less than 25,000, we have 3 members. They're generally appointed for a 3-year term. They're not permitted to be on the board if they are a member of council, if they are a staff member of the village, or a member of the village's advisory planning commission. The 3 members themselves elect a member to act as the board chair. And then we have a board clerk, and this individual is responsible for all the administrative issues associated with what the board is trying to achieve. Records of all the minutes, the meetings, all of that type of information. So how do we make an application? Well, that's all laid out inside of the Board of Variance bylaw, and it basically summarizes it's got to be site drawings of the plan, land title certificate, not more than 30 days old, explanation of the hardship and reasons for the hearing, and any other information as required, the required application fee, the applicant's name and contact information. Then once we get all of that information together, and there's the board clerk in conjunction with the board chair, they talk about all of this, and they send out the notice for 10 days, at least 10 days before the scheduled hearing, and they make sure as well that the Board of Variance members have their agenda packages. Now, how far out do we send this? We're suggesting at this point we send it out 50 meters from the site to the adjacent landowners, and so that they can make a comment as whether or not they like the idea or they do not like the idea. So basically, we have the hearings, and part of that process is it has to be in a public place. They cannot meet in somebody's kitchen or living room or just down here in the park. They have to meet in an open place like Memorial Hall or in the village office. They must be open to the public. presentations, the person or the owner can make a presentation to the Board of Variance, and the decision notice, as I mentioned earlier, that is provided to the applicant within 10 days, and the only way it can be appealed is through the provincial court system. So the quorum of the board is 2 members. The decision is majority rules. The decision is final and binding unless the judge says otherwise. And the technical support is village staff may act as a technical advisor, and external experts or professionals may also be brought in as required. And once this bylaw is adopted, it will repeal the current Board of Variance bylaw 810/2004, which is now 22 years of age, and speaks to the word appeal through the process. And with that, Your Worship, we're recommending that the Board of Variance bylaw 1247/2026 be introduced and given first reading.
Who moves, Your Worship? Move first reading.
Councillor Pacho moves first reading, seconded by Councillor Swinebens. Off to the next part. We need to, sorry, I always forget this part. We need to vote, right? We don't have discussion though, is that correct? All in favor of first reading? We're on to the next part of the motion. Go ahead, Mr. Kasi.
Thank you, Your Worship. The Board of Variance bylaw number 1247/2026 be given second reading.
Second reading moved by Councillor Vital, seconded by Councillor Jackson. Discussion on that. Councillor Pacho.
Thank you, Your Worship. I don't think this would be a problem, but taking into account that all our committees normally stay on to the term of council, shouldn't that be changed from 3 years to 4 years for the term?
The legislation, Your Worship, is still at the 3-year limit.
Oh, okay, fair enough, okay. Now, I noticed that, now, would they have to comply like the other committees to the council procedure bylaw?
Yes, Your Worship.
Okay.
And you're not obligated also to appoint anybody at this point in time. It's just wise to have this bylaw in the back so that if and when an application comes, then we can get the individual appointed, because that's Board of Variance is members are appointed by council.
Thank you, that was all, thank you. Oh, sorry.
Thank you, Mayor Talon. Through you to Mr. Kasi. Just for some clarification. So a Board of Variance ruling then would be binding, but the applicant would have the opportunity to appeal that through the province? Is that correct?
That is correct, Your Worship.
Thank you. And another question is, if an applicant puts an application through to the Board of Variance, before that application is approved, does staff review the application and make a determination whether or not this is a minimum hardship? How is that process?
That is correct, Your Worship. It'll be up to staff to say that yes, it is a hardship, or no, it's not, but then the Board of Variance will get to see whatever the recommendations are and say, no, we disagree or we agree.
Thank you. And one other clarification. Board of Variance, the intention is not to sort of like replace council's role. on establishing like zoning and zoning policy. It's strictly, Board of Variance is strictly to just deal with applicants' hardships. Is that correct?
That is correct, Your Worship. The key word here is they're looking for relief from various bylaws that council have made.
Thank you. Nothing further, Mayor Tallon.
Thank you, Councillor Vital. Other comments, questions, discussion? I have one, Mr. Cossey. And I read several other communities' bylaw concerning Board of Variance, and some do and some don't clarify whether deliberations of the board are in a public forum or if they're in camera. And ours is silent. It states that the hearings are public, but the board's deliberations are, can you clarify if they are also in public or can they be in camera?
No, Your Worship, they're also in public. When we say they have a hearing, that's from start to finish. That includes their deliberations and their decision.
Thank you for that clarification. I don't have any other questions. I'll call the vote on the motion. All in favor? Receive second reading. And the last motion is directing staff to proceed with organizing a public hearing on this. Can I have a motion to that effect? No? Oh, I'm reading the wrong one. Sorry. Oh, look at that. They all look the same. Third reading. Can I have a motion to that? Councillor Vital moves third reading. Councillor Jackson seconds it. Discussion on third reading. I don't see any. I'll call the vote. All in favor? And that carries. The next one with the public hearing. I got ahead of myself here. Mr. Cossey, back to you for 16B.
Thank you, Your Worship. This is zoning amendment bylaw number 1246, 2026. So the summary amendments in this bylaw include updating and adding definitions. We've updated the terminology. We've clarified current sections of the bylaw. Minor adjustments have been made to some of the regulations. We've moved an enforcement requirement from a hardline requirement to a performance-based requirement. And we'll talk about that as we go through the process. But this is actually, as I mentioned earlier, this is a different type of an amendment bylaw. This is a housekeeping bylaw. So what do we mean by housekeeping? Well, it's a bylaw that makes minor technical, administrative, or clarifying amendments to an existing zoning bylaw to improve the accuracy, consistency, without generally changing the overall land use policy direction. Some of these examples include typos, numbering errors, clarifying definitions, removing obsolete definitions, updating terminology, fixing the formatting, removing duplicate regulations. So the function and the purpose of bylaw 1246, 2026 is to clean up the current zoning bylaw 1115, 2017. So how have we done that? This is identified on the chart. That's also in your agenda package. We can see that we've looked at under the farmer's market definition, we've taken out, removed mobile food trucks, because this was requested by council. The cannabis terminology has changed from marijuana to cannabis, so we're catching up with the federal government requirements. Backyard chicken coops address neighborhood health, safety, and nuisance concerns. Agricultural land reserve, again with addressing the cannabis issue, we're catching up with the agricultural land reserves requirements. Intersection sightlines, we're removing all of the sightline requirements at this in this bylaw and moving it from a regulatory requirement to a performance-based visibility requirement. And I'll explain some of that a little bit later on as we go into it as well. Again, the cannabis issue, we've removed section 4.4.2E. It's no longer required under the performance-based informants approach. And again, the cannabis production, catching up with the new word. And then the parking cash in lieu. Originally, when we did the bylaw in 2017, if an applicant came in and asked that instead of providing you with off-street parking or on-site parking, can I provide you with some cash in lieu so that you can start building a parking lot? Originally, it was at $15,000. I've sat down and looked at this cost. Now today, in 2017, it was $15,000, and today it's approximately $42,500 per parking stall. So we need to update that in the bylaw as well. One of the things that we're doing is, as I mentioned earlier, is the sightline requirements. So why are we doing this change? Well, the existing requirements are duplicating engineering standards. Site triangles can create site-specific or can require site-specific technical judgment. It may be difficult to administer consistently. We're fixing the requirements, or the fixing requirements may conflict with the context-sensitive street design. For example, if you wanted to have more trees on the street, but at the intersection, we've got all the trees have basically got to be taken down. We want to get away from that. So this is why we're going to a performance-based concept. And through that performance-based concept, what we can do is look at it on a case-by-case application process. We have development approval information bylaw in place, which requires the applicant under either a rezoning application or a development permit application to do specific engineering reviews for us, which includes the site triangle. At the subdivision stage, your approving officer under the concept of public safety has that ability as well to ask for that additional information. And as well, another tool that's available to the municipality is the use of covenants. So some of the other text amendments include the definitions that we've had to add in there, the backyard chicken coop, the cannabis, medical cannabis. Some of the definitions that we removed include the marijuana dispensary, and the farmer's market. We removed the word mobile food truck. So some of the key regulatory amendments include the backyard chicken coops, and in section 3.3 is amended by inserting backyard chicken coops. But what does that mean? That means under section 3.3 that they're prohibited in all zones. The Agricultural Land Reserve, we've updated references to the Agricultural Land Reserve regulations, and we're looking at, again, the concept of cannabis retail stores and cannabis production. Basically, we're not allowing any of the cannabis retail stores are prohibited in all zones in the village unless the Agricultural Land Reserve in their little area say that this can happen. And that's following their rules and their regulations. So why are we looking at doing some issues with the backyard chicken coops? Well, backyard chicken coops may raise neighborhood health, safety, and nuisance concerns, including noise, odor, pests, animal welfare, predator, bylaw enforcement, lot size, and setback limitations. So some of the other amendments that we've looked at, again, under section 3.3, we've removed the term marijuana and put in cannabis. We're, again, addressing cannabis. All of these information pages 66 to 81 of your agenda packages, outlined in the red, shows all of the changes. The big change is the cash in lieu. How did we arrive at that figure of 42,500? Well, if you look at pages 61 and 62 of your agenda package, there's a process that we went through. The big thing is we looked at the information on how much does it cost to create one above ground parking space. And then we did some calculations forward from there, and we looked at how much does a commercial land in Harrison Hot Springs cost, and then factored all of that in with the scenario of looking at a parking stall uses about 300 square feet on average, roughly. So we looked at that scenario. We looked at the scenario with 325 square feet and 350 square feet, and we came up with a high and a low. And the low, $18,000. The high is almost 60,000, and in the middle is the 42,500, and that's how we arrived at that figure, Your Worship. So with that in mind, we're recommending that zoning bylaw number 1246, 2026 be introduced and given first reading.
First reading moved by Councillor Vital, seconded by Councillor Jackson. We'll call the vote. All in favor. And that first reading, there's no discussion. All in favor? Yes, Councillor, it was unanimous. Thank you. Motion for second reading. Moved by Councillor.
Second reading, Your Worship.
Councillor Fascio moves second reading, seconded by Councillor Vital. Discussion on that. Councillor Fascio.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Cossey, for a very comprehensive work on this housekeeping study. The only concern I have, I can appreciate the cost of land and construction that's a pretty big blow to a developer who may not be able to supply all the required parking spaces within the building for 42,000. I think that's going to turn away a lot of prospective interest, that amount. I can understand maybe a $5,000 increase, but I mean, I would anticipate it would have to be at some point down the road one day, a developer to build a parking lot here themselves. But to me is quite thank you for working out why it costs that. I can appreciate that. I know in Vancouver, you're probably paying more than that for a little space if you wanted one permanently. But I think the cost is quite exorbitant to put on a development. That's my only concern on that list there. Yeah, thank you.
Mr. Cossey, can you clarify the 42,000, what that's for? That's not a cost necessarily for a developer if the developer provides for all the off-street parking that's required, they're not paying 42,000. Can you explain that?
Yes, Your Worship. What it means is if I come in and I've got a development, I'm supposed to do 20 parking stalls on site, and I can only get 10 in there. So I'm going to enter into an agreement with the village to give you cash in lieu for the other 10. And then you put that away in your reserve fund so that at some point in the future, you're building parking spaces somewhere.
Thank you, Mr. Cossey. So the 42,000 is, I guess, an incentive for developers to provide on-site parking, or they can try and approach the village for something in lieu of that. And given how much parking comes up at our council meetings concerning the lack of it, I think we should be encouraging our developers to comply with the bylaws and provide for on-site parking as needed. Any other comments? Councillor Schweinbenz.
Thanks, Mayor Talon. I shared the same concern, Councillor Fascio, because ultimately it's not developers that pay, it's our kids who are trying to buy a unit somewhere that pay this extra $42,000. So I think we should find, I know that you've described it as the middle ground with the $42,000 per space, but I think that it's hard for me to believe that these costs are that high when the roads are already here. A lot of the items that you mentioned here as part of your low estimates with regards to circulation and drive aisles and setbacks and landscaping, that's already in place along our roads. So I would prefer to go to the low estimate. And I will move right now that we adopt the low estimate for the parking charges for these developments.
Councillor Swinburne's moving, what's the specific, that the parking fee in lieu of providing parking, so this is now on-street parking, that comes with, what was the low end, Mr. Cossey?
19,500, Your Worship.
So, Councillor Swinburne, understanding you're moving an amendment to the bylaw to change the 42,000 to 19,500, and this is the price.
I'm a realist. I don't think that's going to pass, but I'd like to see staff come back with something that's a little bit more palatable, that reduces red tape, that reduces the cost of development if they can't fit. I mean, we are on a high water table here. Society's changing. Cities need to get more creative when it comes to walking and public transit. And some people, including young people, are embracing that with different modes of transportation. The new generation aren't always having cars. Older people don't always have cars, and they don't necessarily require an automobile to be parked at their place of residence. So I think we should be creative and allow for the developers and residents in these new developments to get away from the car-oriented lifestyle. I don't want to charge them for that car-oriented lifestyle if they're not going to use it. So I would like staff to report back with something that's more palatable.
Councillor Swinburne, so you moved to change the 42,000 parking fee in lieu of providing parking that they pay 42 to, if I understood correctly, 19.5, but now your last comment suggests you may be withdrawing your motion in favor of something else. Can you clarify, please?
I'll change the wording because I don't think the low estimate's going to happen with this group. But could we just direct staff to come back with council with some more reasonable parking deferral rates?
Corporate officer.
Thank you. If I could just jump in momentarily. So our planning consultant has provided a range based off of, based off of calculations there. Ideally, it would be helpful for council to determine what that cash in lieu would be prior to going to a public hearing, so that we can make sure that the bylaw that goes to the public and is presented at the public hearing has been thought out by council in terms of the cash in lieu figures. Thank you.
Thank you, Corporate Officer. I think that would be helpful for a public hearing as well. CIO Cook.
Thank you very much, Your Worship. I just want to point something out I think that council is missing. If there was a developer that came with a compliant development, this would not be imposed. This is, in a sense, a bit of a deterrent to ask for the request, because the idea is for them to build the parking that is required. If we're not doing that, we're going to be taking cash, we're going to be holding on to it for goodness knows how long, because it costs tens of millions of dollars to build parking structures nowadays. So the idea of it being higher is actually to deter the request. Now, because on top of that, while we wait to accumulate this money to be able to build a parking structure, they're going to be impacting the offsite parking. So I would encourage council to really think about that value being higher as more of a deterrent than more of an affordability issue.
Thank you, CEO Cook. Councillor Swinbanks, back to you. Do you have a motion at this time, or are you mulling? I can come back to you before we.
I think I've stated it. I don't think anybody's seconded it. I'm trying to cut down red tape. I think we need to be a housing-friendly community. Society is getting more creative when it comes to non-use of cars, including my kids' generation who just want to move into a place. And if a development, whether it's a co-op or a unique kind of a housing complex, doesn't have that ability to have the parking spots on site, then I don't know why they need to pay that much money. It sounds like a lot of money, which is just passed on to the consumer, our kids' generation.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Swinbanks. Councillor Jackson.
Your worship, this item has to go to public hearing. I don't think we should be doing or making any changes now to such time as we come back from that public hearing. You may get an entirely different take what different councillors are saying here. So we're way ahead of ourselves. We have a process here, the first, second reading, and go to public hearing. I think that's what we should be dealing with. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Jackson. Any other discussion on the motion second hearing? Seeing none, I'll call the vote. All in favor? And that receives second hearing. And the last is directing staff to public hearing. A motion to that effect, please. Moved by Councillor Vital, seconded by Councillor Jackson. Discussion on the motion. Seeing none, I'll call the vote. All in favor? And we'll direct staff to have a public hearing on that. And maybe we'll hear more about costs in lieu of providing parking. Oh my. Next item is new business. This is from me from the last meeting. Just some clarification, a motion that would provide a very clear answer for staff in the village, whether this council is open to exploring some sort of partnership and a land exchange with the school board for a civic campus proposal and a new school. I think what's different for me now is very clear clear language here in the proposal that the forested area of Fire Hall Park is we heard very much important to many people in the village, and whether we can have exploratory discussions to look into working with the school board to protect those values to the greatest extent possible, or maybe enhancing the use of the park, making it more usable, those forested areas, when and if a new school is constructed, and that forms part of the civic campus project. I'd like this to succeed. I know this is a little bit similar, in my view, to the challenge we gave staff with the dike project, which was we would really like to protect the village from flooding from the lake, but we don't want to compromise the views of the lake with walls or anything else, a raised dike that would interfere with the views and drastically change the character. I see this as sort of a similar situation, and I would hope council would allow the motion to be seconded to begin with, and then proceed to allow staff to see if there's a creative solution that can protect those forested areas of Fire Hall Park while at the same time allowing for a land exchange, and with our push behind the school board, maybe getting a new school and then opening the doors for the village to consider a civic campus project down the way. That's my sales pitch. I didn't get to make that last time because I was not in council, so I will move this and I won't read it out, and I'll look for a seconder. Seconded by Councillor Swinbanks, and discussion. Councillor Vital.
Thank you, Mayor Tallon. I think a new MOU does have value because it will respond directly to the concerns that have been raised by residents regarding the trees at Fire Hall Park. But it also provides an opportunity to explore a broader benefit to our community. Fire Hall Park is a community space, and residents have made it clear that they value the trees. When residents bring forward concerns, I believe council has a responsibility to listen and ensure those concerns are appropriately addressed if possible. I also want to be very clear about the Memorandum of Understanding, or MOU. I want to emphasize that the MOU would be non-binding. Supporting it does not commit the village or council to any particular project, expenditure, or outcome. It only provides a framework for continuing discussions and exploring possibilities. One of those possibilities is how this could potentially benefit the school board and the future construction of a new school in our community. If there is an opportunity to work collaboratively with the school board, there could be benefits in terms of planning, coordination, land use, and potentially creating a better overall outcome for our community. A new school is an important long-term investment. If discussions surrounding Fire Hall Park can contribute in a meaningful way to advance the possibility of a new school, while also addressing residents' concerns about the park and its trees, I believe it's worth exploring again. A new MOU would not guarantee a new school, nor does it commit the village to any particular use of the land. I also agree there must be opportunities for public input should this matter move forward. Depending on what could eventually be proposed, public engagement would provide residents with another important opportunity to express their views on any future potential decisions. For me, the recommendation is about keeping the conversation open. It allows us to listen to residents, work with the school board, explore the potential for a new school, consider the future of Fire Hall Park and its trees, and ensure that any significant future decisions on use of the land is made transparently and with appropriate public involvement. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Vital. Councillor Pacho.
Thank you, Your Worship. Through you first, Your Worship, have we heard from the school district if the funding has been approved yet from the province since our last trip there last September?
I don't believe it made it into the 2026-2027 budget cycle, and I haven't heard anything different from the school board. So we have another opportunity if we're contemplating partnering through an MOU. We would then be able to advocate, as we did last year, with the school board to the province for funding for a new school.
Thank you. I just want to emphasize this very clearly. Whether we go with an MOU or we don't go with an MOU, I fully support a new school. We need one. There's no getting away from that. We lobbied very hard at UBCM last year in regards to the funding for the for a new school in Harrison Hot Springs. I'm fully behind that funding. I'm not sure whether really we should be seeking the approval process before we get into an MOU, because we're going through a lot of conversations with an MOU with the school and moving forward in certain areas there. And the wording still indicates that we will be discussing options regarding how the Fire Hall Park forested area would be used. And I think that's the important issue here. Do we go ahead with that, or do we allow the school to do their own planning, and we do our own planning and forget about the renovations to the existing school, which I think is going to be more costly than what probably has been anticipated, but I'll leave that for now. I'm just concerned that we're putting the cart before the horse here. We should get the approval process moving, because even if the public, I cannot see them turning down a new school through an approval, but things happen. And I'm just concerned about this MOU. Those Councillor Vidal said MOUs are not binding, but it does give the indication that we're striking a chord here in regards to, well, they're going to move ahead with whatever destruction or whatever trees they want to take down for the school to be expanded. I mean, I think we should be considering looking at the approval process prior to the MOU. And after that has happened, then we can have discussions on whether we go with a total new plan regarding the whole process with the school, and whether the village is going to carry on and do their own thing on their own land. There's lots of uncertainties here which I don't feel very comfortable, but for the sake of, if your indication, Your Worship, is that this MOU would help the school board in their reapplication, if I may use that word, would I be right in saying that, or does it make any difference? Other than getting the support from the village, whether it be an MOU or you have our full support that we do need a new school. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Paschal. Maybe I just clarify. Nothing is being approved with this motion, period. This is a motion that directs staff to engage with the school board to return to council with a draft MOU. And at that time, council could consider whether to approve the MOU, take it out to the village for comment. This is simply saying, staff engage with the school board, prepare an MOU for council and the village's consideration in the future whenever it's done, with some very clear expectations about how that MOU would have to consider, and those are the bullet points there. So I don't see any approval other than this motion directing staff to engage. Approvals of anything would be much down the road once we even see a draft MOU. So whether your comment on whether the village participation with the school board would add a little extra horsepower, if you will, to the school board's budget requests when they go to the province, I believe it will. In speaking with the school board officials and their chair and our elected school board reps, I think a new school in Harrison Hot Springs has been a number 1 or number 2 priority for well over a year. and it hasn't got over the hurdle, over the edge. I think changing it a bit, partnering with the village, puts a new school in Harrison Hot Springs in a different light for the province, particularly if there's opportunities for the school board to perhaps it'll be a little bit more affordable to build a new school from scratch than renovate an existing building. And we certainly know the demands on the school. There's already a single portable, so it's not a surprise to me that the school board has had a new school in Harrison Hot Springs on their books as a priority for many, many years. And I think there's an opportunity for the village to add a little bit of horsepower and a little bit of oomph to their request and see if it gets the attention of the province.
So just if I may, just to clarify, Your Worship, with respect, this moves forward this evening, but that just gives our staff the opportunity to get in conversations with the school, but everything would come back to council at some point to make a decision, yay or nay. So, okay, that's a clarification I wanted. Thank you.
Absolutely, Councillor. This, I would expect the MOU to come back to council, and I would expect, given how much interest this has generated in the village, that we would want to take that out with the school board in another community open house and get feedback before. You know, if I'm on council, I certainly want the benefit of community feedback on any ideas and directions forward at that time. Councillor Schweinman.
Thank you, Mayor Tallon. We did hear very clearly from the community to protect Fire Hall Park. So I'm satisfied that we've done that, and this MOU maintains that premise that Fire Hall Park, the bulk of it or the values of it will not be touched. So I'm satisfied with that. I wanted to congratulate you. Last time this failed, the MOU failed, there was a lot of ambiguity and uncertainty and emotion amongst us and amongst staff. And so congratulations to you and to staff to coming back with something that we can live with. My understanding when I voted it down last time was that it was that particular plan being voted down, not the conversation with the school board. So this allows us to maintain the conversation with the school board, and I think that's important. So I'm supportive of it.
Thank you, Councillor Swinebans. I will call the vote as suggested by Councillor Jackson Wisely. All in favor of the motion? And that carries. Notice of motion, Councillor Swinebans, you have one for us this evening.
Thank you, Mayor Tallon. Do you want me to read it out, or do we have it all here? I'll just give you the premise of this. You know, there's been a lot of discussion and a lot of emotion around the pool and lots of different debate about it. But one thing I think we've all are clear on is that it's going to be a fantastic project and a fantastic opportunity for our residents to participate in physical and cultural and recreational and social opportunities for decades and generations to come. And the main point and spirit of my motion is to make sure that economic barriers for residents of Harrison are erased as much as we can. And so therefore I've got a resolution there that to direct council to investigate and report back to us with ideas should there not be a regional partnership established to address the proposed cost difference in user fees for residents and non-residents of the District of Kent in order to reduce the economic barriers to assess the new pool. So we'll discuss that next time. I'm looking for your support. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Councillor Swinebans. Be an interesting conversation at our next meeting. 19, question period for items relevant to the agenda this evening. Is there anyone who has a question or comment? Chief Janess.
Yes, Curtis Janess, 320 Fern Place. Just discussing the grants for the operations center. I'm glad to see that council decided to send it back to staff to look into this for the generator here for the Memorial Hall. For somebody who is the emergency coordinator for BC with the RCMP, who has also gone out and taught the emergency operations course to numerous organizations, to RCMP, high-level RCMP, to provinces and everything. It's just concerning to me that the discussion of where council believes staff will be during an emergency. CEO Cook and I orchestrated an emergency training event 2 years ago, sorry. And we realized that we needed more help with that. But what ended up happening was, as soon as the emergency operation starts, everything else in the village stops. So to realize that the village office needs a generator, yes, it does. But finding out tonight, we have one sitting at the village compound. Why not use that one and take the $30,000 that the Emergency Operations Center grant has for a generator for the village office, use that here for the reception center instead. So my question to council is, was this actually brought forward to council before anything was decided on having the village office being given the $30,000 for a generator when we have one at the village office or at the village compound right now that can be used with a smaller footprint compared to this, which we heard tonight that one could supply this building, whereas a brand new one most likely would.
Thank you for your question. If I read the staff reports correctly, the generator for the village office would be a sort of one that's constantly on standby and would be automatic and kick in if there's a disruption in the power and also turn off. I have a similar system in my house, so it's very convenient and it doesn't require any maintenance. And if I heard correctly from staff, the portable generators may be needed for other things, such as lift stations and other demands. And if there's going to be a need for a generator for this building, then it probably should be right-sized. And I noted that I think the staff stated that recent electrical upgrades to Memorial Hall anticipated some kind of backup generator system for here that was right-sized. So I think that's the story, as I understand it, unfolded tonight through the staff reports. Is yeah, it's a progression, it's an evolution in building resiliency in the village in the event of power disruptions. Community Services Manager, a little bit more.
Thanks, Mayor Tallon. Yes, that's right. And with the Emergency Operations Center grant, the funding guidelines are specific for maintaining business continuity and the effectiveness of the emergency operations centers, whereas the reception center is under a different grant stream and would be needing to be under a different funding for that type of project.
Thank you, Community Services Manager. Is there anyone else with a comment, question for council tonight? Please proceed.
Sorry. Yes, Mr. Mayor. John James Allen, 398 Hot Springs Road. A couple of questions for council tonight. Primarily, why are you continuing to try and develop this campus idea, which includes the use of Firehall Park as some of this infrastructure, public works yard or something? Firehall Park was dedicated as a park in 1983 under the WASC subdivision, which I supervised. Designating that land as a park locks in perpetuity to be a park and nothing else. You cannot use that land for a works yard or a school or whatever, because it is a park, it's designated. The process for you to break that designation and sell it off to whoever is long, laborious, and unlikely to succeed. On top of that, the general public in the Harrison Village area, and particularly that area around Firehall Park, are determined that you will not destroy Firehall Park. So I think that it's foolish of you to go and waste your time and everybody else's time pursuing this idea of a campus, putting the public works yard right on the highway and destroying one of our few large areas of green space in the central part of the village. We've lost the green space that was supposed to be preserved across the highway and became the Branches Townhouse condo complex instead of the Miami Slough Greenland Park area. And now you're proposing to lose this. The village has not really added anything to our park inventory over the years since I got the 73 acres on Macomb Drive. You're supposed to have a fund and you're supposed to be planning to increase the amount of parkland to reflect the increase in the population. You've done none of that. You're going backwards instead of forwards. And I ask you, where is the park master plan that even says anything about a splash park in Spring Park? It doesn't. Where is the OCP on these issues? You've ignored it. I just ask you to return at some point to logical planning for Harrison, which is notable by its absence in these decisions that I have the misfortune to witness tonight. On the same vein, you've put a bylaw forward without any public consultation to form a board of variance. And within that bylaw, it looks like you can continue to appoint people from Agassiz and Abbotsford. There's no requirement that Harrison people be the people on the board of variance. And that should be a primary clause in any such bylaw, and it's not. So I just ask you to step back and try and think of the long term and try and think of your responsibilities to provide for this community to function effectively in the future. Never mind the pressures of today, and that, I believe, is missing in these decisions. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments. If I took them down correctly here, there's a lot to unpack here. Maybe I'll start at the end, long term. I think in the long term, our council is making decisions that try and enhance the community for residents and exploring opportunities sometimes can help shape things. And I know it seems from your comments you have a great fear of conversations with other parties. I'm open to exploring and letting staff do their job and come back with sound recommendations. I'm not afraid of those conversations down the road. I believe you are mistaken, though, in the Civic Campus project, and Councillor Faccio asked some very good questions, which were clarified. This is not a decision to go forward on anything. It's a decision to direct staff to come back to council and the village, most likely with a draft MOU that might find a way, and in the documents there, protect the values and features of the park, and also allow for a new school and potentially a civic campus things as well, all to the greater long-term benefit interests of the village. Are there any other questions this evening? Is there anyone online with a, oh, sorry, go ahead, I see you in the room.
Hi, my name is Cassandra Manley. I live at 750 Hot Springs Road, number 6.
Excuse me, you gotta get real close, we can't hear
you. Oh, okay, I'll speak louder. I did have a question about, this is my first council meeting that I've attended in person here, so I do just have a quick question about the quotes for the HVAC upgrades. It said that, or it was discussed and approved that $40,000 would be allocated towards this. I'm just wondering, do you guys actually have quotes for $40,000? Have you received 3 quotes already, that kind of thing? And is it close or is it quite far away? And if there is a difference or a variance left over, could that then be applied towards a generator? because that seems to be a high priority, but yet there seems to be a gap in the funding. So assuming that it is not going to cost every single penny of up to $40,000, that grant may actually help apply over here. For the EOC, same thing. You know, $30,000, is it all going to go towards the office? Maybe not. Are you set up to receive a generator at this point, like this building is, or is that going to be an additional cost to consider first? Things like that. So I have a few questions just around what other things are going to be provided in addition to the generator when an EOC is actually enacted, because chances are phone lines are going to be down, internet's going to be down. So are there other backups in place for those as well? Because it was discussed that that would likely be the hub of where it's going to receive a lot of the phone calls and people that are worried about the emergency. And so is there a way for you to receive those, or is it going to be a dedicated cell phone, you know, number put out for that? What is the method of communication when everything is actually down? Because you'll have power, you'll have lights, you can turn your computers on and charge them, but you won't actually be able to use them very effectively without internet or phone lines. So I would urge council to consider that as well. Same thing if the full $30,000 of that grant isn't going to be used, but it can still be used towards emergency center funding. Perhaps then it could be negotiated or discussed with the funder that it could be partially put over here, especially if there's partial grant funding from another stream. They like to see their dollars being used, especially in effective ways that are going to help the community at large. So it might take a little bit of back and forth conversation, but this is something that you guys can push for. It's not something that you have to say, oh, that's a different funding stream, let's just wait another year. You know, I saw a couple eyes roll when this counselor over here mentioned that we have a lot of power outages. We do. It doesn't mean that other places around don't, but there are a lot of power outages here, and more than I've ever experienced in Chilliwack or Agassiz or anywhere else. So, you know, I think that there is some merit to that. For the splash park, from what I heard, the funding comes from tourism. And so I'm wondering if the splash park is meant to be for tourism or community, because that's probably a really fundamental question to ask before actually listening to Habitat, who is going to be out for themselves. Let's be honest here. They are going to be out to make $1. I've worked with them before. I know how much they overcharge. You do have to negotiate with them. That being said, they might suggest that Spring Park is a good location. That doesn't mean that it's the only location available or the most feasible location. It's just compared to what they've looked at over here at the beach. That being said, I'm actually working on a splash park in the community that I work in right now, and you can get a foot wash station installed. So sand actually doesn't have to be a concern. You could even put one on each end. Yes, it's an additional cost that you have to build into the budget, but it's an easy workaround. So again, if this is supposed to be for tourism, and that's where the funding is coming from, and you want to keep tourism as a hub kind of on this end so that it doesn't encroach into the community where residents are trying to enjoy themselves, then it does need to stay up with everything else. I do agree with that. If this is supposed to be a community splash park, intended for residents primarily, not intended for tourism, then yes, let's look somewhere further in the village. Then I completely agree, because I would love to bring my 2 kids out there and have a quiet afternoon playing and splashing in the park. But if it's meant for tourism, then we need to prioritize that for what the purpose is and put it where all the tourists are going to go. Maybe it can go down at Greenpoint. That's a day access only area. I don't know if that's an option, but you know, like maybe a bit more creativity, right? It doesn't have to go in the only park that residents have. And I know for like Easter and things like that, there's other times of the year where we actually use the whole footprint of that park. And so if a splash pad is taking up space, are we going to be able to use that in all the other events that are hosted there throughout the year? For the cenotaph, I heard English and French brought up. Why is Hakamelam not being considered? You are in the traditional territory of the Stateless people. You are surrounded by First Nations. Ultimately, you're on First Nations land. That should be like a no-brainer. And I think that it's a little bit sad that that wasn't immediately put forward. As for the school, I attended the community engagement session at the school. I had a lot of questions and most of them were unanswered. It was really disappointing. I went to the planning tables, I went from table to table asking the same questions, and until I spoke to the engineer, I didn't get a solid answer. That's including, the school district and whoever else was involved that day. My question was, and understanding that there's different code requirements, right, for a school than for a community building. But if a code has to be to a certain standard because children are going to be in the building, why does that have to be the main reason to build a new building and then say, oh, but the existing building is fine for recreation, which will inevitably include children, vulnerable people, disabled people, elders, etc. And so if renovations can be made for a community center, why could it not be made for a school as well? And these were questions that I had asked at the engagement, and they weren't able to be answered. It was just put back to me that there's a difference in the codes. And I said, why is there a difference in safety? It comes down to an ethical and moral basis for this one, you guys. If the school is not safe for children, it's not safe, period. It needs to be decided either it can be renovated and made safe for people, or it can't. And I think that discussion right there might help dictate if it needs a new build or if it needs to be renovated. I agree, Public Works should not be on the main drag. I think that would be so distasteful to have to drive past on the main route of a tourism community. I think that there is a lot of opportunity for further discussion around that one. And I really encourage council to embark on those discussions and not rush anything.
Thank you for your sharing that. I don't think we have time to try and answer all your questions. I'd love to get your contact information if possible and try and respond to the things you raised here in your statement. So if you provide that to myself or staff, I will try and get back to you on that. There will be lots of opportunities for public engagement. Obviously, the splash park included was talking about location and implication of Spring Park. And if the school and civic campus project advances at all, there'll be lots of public engagement and opportunities to have questions answered and opportunities to ask them. Is there anyone online with a question this evening?
Anyone on Zoom, if you have a question, please raise your hand. Questions, Your Worship?
No questions? No. All right, that takes us to item 20. Moved to adjourn by Councillor Faccio, seconded by Councillor Jackson. Discussion, I don't see any. All in favor? We're adjourned. Thank you all.